Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vibhor Bansal. I'm from NASSCOM, and welcome back to the NASSCOM's webinars. Today we have Dr. Shom Datta Singh with us, who is the serial entrepreneur and wears multiple hats, including the founder and director of Unspun Marketing Group, and she is also a vice chairperson of NASSCOM Product Council. Plus, we have Bharat Lingam. He is also a serial entrepreneur, thought leader in digital space. He runs multiple companies, and these are Purple Talks, X Cube Labs, Nukkad Shops, etc. And he's also a member of NASSCOM Product Council. Today we are going to talk.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome, Shom.
Yeah, thanks, Vibhor. Good afternoon, Shom. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bharat Lingam, and I'm excited here to talk about how to create an innovation-driven culture.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you, Shom. So today we're gonna, as Bharat just mentioned, we're gonna talk about how innovation will help you lead in the market, and how you build the innovation culture in your organization. The topic is very fascinating, and there is a good story behind it. Some time back, our product council chairperson, Mr. Atul Batra, who is the CTO of Manthan, were visiting Bharat's office and meeting his colleagues, his team, and seeing the culture in the organization and the way the organization is being run. He was very impressed with it, and he said, "Hey, Bharat, why don't you do this for the whole ecosystem? Let the people know how to create a brilliant, innovative culture in your organization." And while we were discussing it, Dr. Shom also pitched in and volunteered to share her expertise in this area, and she wearing multiple hats. In, as I told you before, she is also into policies. She runs a marketing product company. She is into marketing consulting. She runs a digital learning institute and whatnot. She is also an angel investor as well. And similarly, Bharat has been is been into the product business for quite long. He is currently running 4 businesses and always traveling. It's been very it's been a pleasure to have both of our superstars on this webinar. So I won't take much of a time and will not come in between you and Bharat and Shom. We'll start with Bharat's first, and then with Shom. So Bharat, over to you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Vibhor, for the nice words, and I think that was very gracious of Atul to actually motivate us to do this webinar. I don't think that we have accomplished a great deal when it comes to having the right innovation culture, but there's certainly certain episodes or certain elements of growth that are highly integrated with innovation, and I'd love to share that with our lessons with the with the ecosystem, both good or bad, and allow them to judge for themselves if they would want to implement some of those inside their organization, right? And even otherwise, I'm very happy to get your feedback through my email or Twitter or LinkedIn.
Yes, Bharat, and I would take this opportunity. I missed it earlier. Please share your feedback. You guys will see a feedback form as soon as the webinar ends. It will not take more than 30 seconds of yours. Thank you, Bharat. Please go ahead.
Yeah, cool. So I'm waiting for your slide to kind of show up, Vibhor. So, right. Yeah, so we're basically talking about building a culture of innovation, right? And I want to pause here a little bit and then talk about how innovation is becoming extremely important in today's culture. Whether you're talking about especially in the IT space and even more so in the other verticals, right? All of us have heard this phrase called "software is eating the world," which basically means that the leader in each and every business, whether you're talking about retail, agriculture, finance, so on and so forth. All of them happen to be software businesses, and we're also seeing a lot of kind of convergence of businesses, right? I mean, what is a healthcare business today is going to be a retail business tomorrow, and vice versa. And this basically puts innovation at the heart of everything, right? Innovation at the heart of economic growth, right? So can we move to the next slide, Vibhor? Yeah, so people, I mean, and this presentation is primarily going to be a little bit bottom up because we're going to talk about some of our successes, some of the things that we do, and then how can we abstract them into principle that could potentially be useful to people. People keep asking us, hey, what's Purple Talk, and why you guys call it Purple Talk, right? So for us, purple is a very interesting color. It's a color that is very intense. It is very rare, and rarity and intensity is something that we kind of equate with quality, right? And talk is basically suffusing the world. So fundamentally, when we talk about Purple Talk, it is basically suffusing the world with something that's unique and something that's intense, and this kind of flows out into everything that we do. Next slide, please. So here is a little bit about how we are structured. Purple Talk is the holding company, and we have multiple brands, and some of them are actually independent companies in their own right. So Xcube Labs is the flagship brand of Purple Talk. Here is where we offer digital strategy to a host of very, very large enterprises and some mid-sized enterprises. So what we do is we help them figure out what their customer experience should be, what their new product strategy could be, and fundamentally build what we call the digital operating platform. And we work with companies like United Health Group, Magellan Healthcare, Tenet Healthcare, 24-Hour Fitness, so on and so forth, right? Upshot is our customer engagement platform. So essentially, how do you, if you're a retail company, if you're a financial services company, how do you engage with users at scale, educate them on how to manage their finances better, and thereby create more opportunities for you to upsell, cross-sell, and increase the lifetime value of your customer, right? So Nukkad Shops is an India-focused company, and the problem that we're trying to solve is how can we modernize Indian retail? How can a small mom and pop grocery shop next door have the same technology that potentially a Target uses when it comes to offer management, when it comes to customer communication, and so on and so forth. And YesNom again is one of our companies, and it is a leading IP-based game publishing company. So we publish games on a lot of Hollywood IP like Star Trek, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Madagascar, Join the Circus, so on and so forth, right? So that's an overall view of the business. Next slide, please. So you will notice that we actually have businesses in diverse areas, and each of these businesses as independent management is doing quite well. So what I want to talk about here is that we are a slightly unconventional company because most of our growth has is kind of in multiple different segments, unlike just in one segment, and and a lot of it is because of the culture that we have, the innovation culture. So if you want to kind of have a snapshot of what can an innovation culture deliver, we're talking about 4 companies. Each of them are solving hard problems. The category leading companies, high growth companies, and no real institutional capital that went into these companies, right? They're pretty much bootstrapped and with some money from friends and family, right? And in terms of number of people, we are over 600 people present globally and growing. We have tens of millions of users and over 30 Fortune 5000 customers, right? And all of this can be delivered if you employ the right innovation culture. So therefore, innovation is not just optics, but it can actually drive real value for your business and for your shareholders. Next slide, please. So now, what exactly is innovation, right? Because there are a lot of different things that come in innovation, and our definition of innovation is, one is being able to solve, hard technology problems, right? Solve problems in technologies that we are unfamiliar with, or solve an existing problem, so much better using new technologies, right? So that's one area that we call innovation. The second thing is innovation is not always about new technologies or new products. It's also about, hey, how can I use some new tech to create a superior customer experience, to create superior internal processes, right? And that's innovation that we can taste on a regular basis, because this is something that's being used internally. And the third thing is, using innovation, can we incubate new businesses? And if you look at the new businesses that we incubated, all of them have been, all of them came about because we invested in innovation. Next slide, please. So one of the critical aspects when it comes to driving innovation is leadership, right? And as leadership, we can always look at the business purely from a P&L perspective, right? And we can also look at it from a higher purpose perspective. Here's this famous scene from Diwar where you have Amitabh Bachchan and Shashi Kapoor kind of, dueling on what's important in life. Obviously, both mom as well as your balance sheet, both of them are very, very important. But we need a good mix of those, right? In the sense that, if you are to be an innovation-driven business, you need to have a higher goal. You won't, you can't just be focusing on, hey, how is the math working out on my spreadsheet, and how is my investor statement, looking this quarter, right? So can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so a critical question for you to ask, when you're leading a business is why you're doing this, right? So one is, are you looking at it again just from a bean counter perspective, or are you a stargazer? Do you have a dream that you're fulfilling? Is there a way of life that you're kind of accomplishing? Is there meaning to your life that you're kind of deriving from what you are doing, right? I think that's very important when you're talking about innovation, because innovation is something that's very, very very personal. You could do very many different things, and then still meet your top line and bottom line targets. But it becomes you really need to cut into the psyche of the leadership to really kind of become a company that fosters innovation, right? So we'll just explain, what has been driving us, and why we are doing this. Next slide, please. So for us, this is not the first company that we started. We were, the same team, the founding team has been together for a couple of companies earlier. And for us, it's always been about, hey, can we solve some hard problems? Can we solve some interesting problems? Can we have fun along the way? And we can create, strong impact, right? Obviously, there's going to be, when you solve hard problems and you're passionate, you're definitely not going to die poor. You're going to make some money, but then you also need to look at what is the higher principle, and keep motivating yourself along that particular direction, right? So you need to keep doing things to keep life interesting. Can we move to the next slide, please? So for us, we have several companies, and each of them has a North Star, which is very interesting. Interesting problem to solve, a journey that is not really very, very kind of open and shut. Xcube Labs is focused on creating, as I said, digital strategy and digital operating platforms for the Fortune 5000 companies. The way we look at it, if you look at let's say the mid 90s to early 2000, you had a lot of enterprise software, whether it be the SAP Oracle's, Salesforce of the world. They have created, technology. They've created systems of record that have primarily been the digital operating platforms. We feel in the next, couple of decades, you're going to have newer and newer digital operating platforms that are going to emerge, that are going to sit up on top of these systems of record and be able to generate a lot of engagement. And our focus is in helping companies strategize what these digital operating platforms could be and also delivering it. Similarly, NASSCOM is a mobile gaming company, and we have an ambitious vision there too. Our ambitious vision there is to create very, very high quality games based out of India for the world, right? And in a lot of way, we are in a strong pole position there because we have refocused on being able to create a lot of IP-based games, and today we're one of the leaders in IP-based games with properties like Star Trek, Kingsman, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, so on and so forth, right? And then we have another platform, Nukkad Shops, and the whole idea of Nukkad Shops is to focus on the mom and pop shops, the grocery shops, and hundreds of thousands of them exist in India. And then how can we make them world class using technology, right? So, and this is an interesting story because this idea has been incubated by one of our colleagues in junior management, and then we held an innovation competition, and his idea was something that popped up to the top of the stack, and then we invested in it. We had to do multiple pivots and iterations, and today it's our fastest growing company. They generated 26% month-on-month growth over last year. And finally, Upshot is, again, also has an ambitious vision, that of making behavioral engagement, mainstream and be adopted by each and every enterprise, right? So, so each of these companies has an ambitious problem statement, and therefore that kind of keeps us, excited and going. Next slide, please. Next slide. So, what is very, very important when you're talking about driving innovation is also the quality of the team that you're working with, and also the philosophy, the capabilities, and the day-to-day working style, right? So our philosophy at work is digital natives at work. And when we mean a digital native, I mean one of the colleagues that's working with us. So as a digital native company, we have a slightly different view. We operate at high speed. So if you're delivering something, then we do it in increments of 1 week or 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We're highly data driven. So we don't do stuff. We don't do changes to our our platform without being able to get real time feedback from users, and we keep getting that on a very, very regular basis. Also, it's important for us to be able to build for scale, right? Not just some of our businesses need to handle, let's say, a few billion transactions, every day, and therefore we need to be able to kind of have the mindset to build for scale and build the technology that is needed to do that. One other important aspect is heuristics. By heuristics, we mean that we actually invest ahead of time in new digital products, new opportunities, and we learn, right? And we learn from our failures, and then we kind of build it back into our system as heuristic knowledge, or we kind of use the same knowledge to help some of our customers. Right. So next slide, please. And yeah, can we go to the previous slide? No, the previous slide. Yeah, the one. Yeah, this is the one. Okay. So when you look at team members who work with traditional companies in the technology space, most of them are focused on building, taking a specification and building it to tech, right? Especially the services companies. The planning is kind of very rigid. You want to basically do in increments of 3 months or more. A lot of it is primarily based on analysis, on left brain stuff. A lot of times your teams are not co-located. You might have a large company where you have, teams that belong to different, organizations in themselves. So the collaboration becomes a challenge. So the for us, each of our associates, they are basically highly trained on, right-brained aspects like design, right? So we're not interested in just building, a product to specification. We're actually interested and invested in market success. So our mindset there is different. Our philosophy is also kind of, individuals who are self-managed, and there's not a lot of overhead in managing individuals. Again, independent thinking, and also from a technology perspective, being able to have appreciation of the full stack, right? Not just focus on a small silo of the technology, right? Next slide, please. So now the thing is that, hey, how do I get people to work with who can do well under this kind of environment, right? So, and a lot of it goes back to your hiring process. So your hiring process needs to build in tests where you want to look at, getting on board people who either are intellectually curious and, hungry to create, a difference with their work, and people who can basically stick with a problem for a longer time instead of basically giving up early. And having this kind of hiring culture, I think, has helped us, because if you look at the founding team, we have 6-member team. There's been an attrition, over the last close to 10 years. Our team, when it comes to leadership, the middle management is extremely strong and extremely stable. And then a lot of that is because we have a culture where we are patient. We basically have a mindset. We want to build something and then ensure it grows, and then also have a culture which is rewarding of in which contribution itself is a reward. People are motivated to solve very hard problems, and we provide an environment of freedom and flexibility. Next slide, please. And one of the other aspects is is diversity, right? So if you look at what we do, we're in multiple businesses. Most of the times, the people who use our products, they're in different geographic locations. They belong to different cultural background, linguistic background, so on and so forth. For example, tomorrow we could be designing a product for people in China, or we could be designing a product for people who are kids, right? And therefore, we cannot expect to succeed in these initiatives by having a homogeneous team of young to middle-aged male engineers, right? So we kind of have a lot of diversity in our hiring. We have engineers, we have artists, we have people with background in history, background in literature, background in psychology, background in architecture. We recently hired someone from a sports background who's a coach for a sport, so on and so forth. And also, we are very, very enthusiastic about being able to hire the best talent that basically solves that suits the problems that you're trying to solve from any part of the world, right? So we do have teams in Europe, India, South America, as well as the US. And of course, as I've mentioned, there's a lot of diversity that we kind of try to bring in. Obviously, we're not into child labor hiring kids, but we do hire kids as young school-going kids to basically test our games and provide feedback. Those are like 1 week mini internships for them, right? So that's one of our fundamental beliefs, and something that's been helping us succeed. Next slide, please. Now, the other question is, hey, okay, I mean, you have a bunch of smart people, you're giving them, hard problems to solve. Now, how do you discover people, who are innovators, right? I would say a lot of it is kind of, information osmosis by, through communication between your, senior management, middle management. But then you need to be able to kind of create outlets for people to express their creativity. It could mean some entrepreneurship contests, some ideathons, some kind of hackathon events. We also have some formal problem discovery programs where we kind of have discussions on trying to understand what people feel are problems with our products, or problems in general in the ecosystem around us or in the company. Also, we are very, very keen on being able to solve, hard problems, right? For example, a lot of work has been done in neural networks, in video, but not really a lot of it has been done in voice. So, that was one theme that we picked, where we try to solve one very specific unsolved problem in what we call voice shaping, and we gave our data science team the target to solve that. And there's really no, I mean, the goal for them is just to solve the problem, right? You don't have a definite timeline, or there's not a specific monetary value attached to it. But by giving these kind of hard problems to solve and giving them runway to succeed instead of shutting down the project in like 2 or 3 months, we kind of helping create and discover innovators, right? And the other thing is we try to make it a very, very feedback intensive company. So we have a program like Employee Senate, which is primarily a bunch of young people in the company who have the authority to basically figure out what the company should be doing, and then they have the ear of the senior management to accomplish these kind of initiatives, right? So next slide, please. Right. So, and it's not enough to just hire people, give them problems to solve. We also need to ensure that they succeed, right? And historically, I'm proud to say that any key initiative that we've taken up, we have been quite successful in that. So one of the ways in which you can ensure your team is successful is to have strong senior management sponsorship, where senior management is kind of one of your senior managers should be invested in the success of that idea, that product, that kind of initiative. So basically, they're always talking to each other. Of course, it also helps to have, senior team members who are mentors. And of course, you cannot expect a team to succeed if you're not providing the resources, right? So good thing about us is because the bulk of our leadership are engineers, so we are very, very curious about technology, and then we have been so anytime there's a new gadget, new sensor, new device, whatever it is, we try to basically get a beta version of that and make it available for people to test. We have also a lot of soft training going on, when it comes to some of the latest techniques in problem solving, whether it's jobs to be done or rapid prototyping, lean startups, so on and so forth. And overall, we want to retain an edge in the company or a vibe in the company where people are having water cooler conversations on, what are the latest cool things that are happening in the world of innovation, right? So, next slide, please. Of course, the other thing is that innovators thrive by peer recognition. If you look at the blockchain movement, if you look at all the open source movements, like, and whether it be Wikipedia or whether it be Linux or so on and so forth, people like to be recognized by their peers, right? I mean, people would work very, very hard to win the respect of their peers, and I think that's the culture that that is essential for creating innovation. And of course, we have a lot of awards and events, mechanism to kind of recognize these contributors. And importantly, when we feel that a new venture is ready to become an independent company, we source some external funding, so they're out of our cash flow, and then the founding team is kind of has equity in the venture, right? So essentially, we kind of we kind of enabling sweat equity in ventures. Okay, next slide, please. And another aspect of innovation is basically self-belief and resilience, right? So as leadership, we need to have the self-belief that we can do it. And an integral aspect of that is growth mindset. Growth mindset is basically a notion that has arrived from researchers in learning psychology, where they came with the conclusion that if people believe that their brain is malleable, if people believe that if they work hard at something, they can learn new things, then people will, the success of, or rather the possibility of people succeeding is higher, right? Versus people believing that, hey, you know what? I mean, I'm too old a dog to learn new tricks. I mean, this is just not for me. In which case, people won't succeed, right? So our belief is that, as a company, is that everyone can, if they spend enough time, if they work hard at it, everyone can acquire new skills, new ways of thinking, new practices, right? So, and then the self-belief that we can deliver things. I think those things are extremely important. And as I mentioned earlier, not when you have an innovation project, you can't basically attach a P&L to it. You need to basically allow it to kind of do whatever is needed for it to succeed at technology stage, and then later at a basically a market fit stage, and only then you can apply some P&L logic to it. And also, no project that we started, succeeded right off the bat, right? So, for example, our Nooker Shops product, we had to basically go through pretty much 2 years of iteration before we hit market success, and after that, it became a fastest growing company. So, therefore, you need to be able to have a long runway and tolerate failures while still believing in your team and in your product. Okay, next slide, please. And of course, the other thing is that as a company, we need to basically be able to take on hard problems, whether these are our client problems or these are our internal problems. For example, we built for a customer one of the world's first mobile HTML5 based trading platform. Way back in 2012, when the technology was at its very infancy, right? And these initiatives are not really necessarily profit making, but then they kind of keep instilling the love of challenge, the love of learning, and the love of accomplishment in your team members, and you feel good at the end of it. Okay, and similarly, there are like many stories of how we've taken on hard problems and then successfully solved them. I don't think there's been a product or a technology problem that we took on in the last decade or so, and we didn't manage to succeed in it, right? So next slide, please. Yeah. So the other important thing is that innovative enterprises will need to have this culture of eating your own dog food, right? Because how do you know whether an idea is good? The best way to do it is actually be a consumer of your idea and your product yourself. And for that, you will need to instill a culture where people are constantly identifying problems, people are solutioning for it, and then using it, and then basically putting that solution into production internally, right? So fundamentally, you need to build a culture of observation leading to problem discovery, solutioning, and then experimentation with the solution. And then in our company, we always try to see, hey, how can we, what is the area in which we can use technology to create a better customer experience, or use technology to create, some kind of, automation, right? So if you look at our whole, dev process, it's incredibly well automated. We have a lot of, machine learning and statistics that is being applied to actually creating high quality code. Okay, next slide, please. Right, and of course, we can't be innovative, and we cannot, kind of really deliver something that is contextual to the market, unless we're very, very closely aligned to the, how the world is operating and how the world is changing around us. So therefore, we have partnership with a lot of, global accelerators and incubators like Launchpad out of San Francisco, Great North Labs out of Minneapolis, etc. We do, have active conversations and collaboration with some leading technology and business schools globally. Similarly, we have very close partnerships with, organizations like Google, Unity, Microsoft, etc. So that we're always putting the technology that they produce to the, to basically we kind of, put it to some extreme use. And it's not just partnerships with tech providers. We also have close partnerships with with methodology providers like Lean Startup. We very, very actively engage with the startup communities in whatever geography that we're in. On a typical weekend, you find a lot of these startup companies coming in, participating in workshops, pitches, hackathons, etc. in our offices in different locations globally. Next slide, please. And of course, so if you're looking at kind of working with some new technology, if you're looking at really, putting your capabilities to the test. One of the great opportunities, other than basically being consumers of your own innovation, is to work with your customers, right? Have deep relationship with your customers where you can do joint ventures with them. We have a joint venture with a company called Panini, which is a leading Italian sports merchandise company. We have a global partnership with them on IP like NFL, FIFA, NBA, etc. And then these partnerships also help you pilot some new technologies in partnership with them. Look at the the feedback. Also get into more outcome-based partnerships, which is where both parties have skin in the game, and it's not just it's not just a purely commercial transaction. Okay, next slide, please. Right, and finally, innovation is good. It is, it kind of keeps you, excited, makes your life meaningful, helps you retain the best of talent as well as attract the best of talent. But then innovation also has a lot of challenges. You cannot do innovation just for innovation's sake. So while you need to ensure you have a pipeline of innovation, you need to ensure that you are actually realizing business value at that point in time. Otherwise, it's just going to be a futile effort, right? And the other thing is, innovation can be kind of quite exacting on individuals, across the organization. So you need to ensure that people have a mix of some hard problems to solve as well as doing a lot of work that just pays the bills and have you helps you have a more relaxed life every now and then. Okay. I think this is about it for today. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I look forward to any question that you have. Any question that you have, please use the GoToMeeting tool to kind of publish them, and then we'll answer them towards the end of the webinar. So over to you, Vibhor. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you. It's like pretty interesting how the different companies with the different businesses, target markets has been built up, and how you've been able to do it successfully. Now, yes, as Bharat just mentioned, please do write your questions in the chat box, and we will take these questions at the end of the session. Now I'll switch to Shom. So Shom has now. Meanwhile, I'll put her slide deck on show. Shom would like to give us what's your philosophies of innovation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bharat, for the lovely presentation, and thank you, Vibhor, for the introduction. Good afternoon to everyone again who've been participating in the webinar. While Bharat gave a perspective of building different technology companies under an umbrella and the philosophy and the different nuances that needs to be taken into consideration, I have the three companies that I own and drive are all in completely different verticals. So I decided to choose one and focus on that one alone. I run three companies. One is in the area of education, which is called as Digital Leadership Institute, which is focused today on building digital curriculum and education in association with some of the top universities in India, including the like of Christ, Amity, Jain, Lovely, and so on. I have a manufacturing company by the name IRA, which is focused on actually crowdsourcing design and then manufacturing clothes under a women's label called IRA. If some of you have visited Lifestyle, you would have been able to see our brand. But we have an omni-channel presence. We sell both online and offline. So that's the kind of model that we adopt. And today, what I'm going to talk about is my company Unspun Group, which we have built over the last 6 years, and how from a company that started with services, we transformed ourselves into a product company, and today we have, technology at the helm of it, services as an angle to build on top of it, and then we have training which enables the adoption of the services. But Vibhor, next slide.
Sorry, I'm just changing it. Yeah.
So while I talk about all of that, one of the things which is very essential as to how we build the organization, and we believed in a philosophy that drives every organization. And that philosophy for us at Unspun was the Chanakya Niti. And why the Chanakya Niti is because not only do I think he was one of the greatest administrators the world ever saw, but I think the kingmaker is more powerful than the king. And we as an organization wanted to become, a platform that allows different product ideas and different innovation ideas to breed. When we started the organization, we were, like I said, we were a services organization, and we quickly learned that it's very, very important to productize and automate. And you'll be surprised that a lot of our team members who are not technology people today have become programming experts, because that's the power of knowledge, and that's the philosophy that we built it on. So what we say is sukhasya mula dharma, dharmasya moolam artha, arthasya moolam rajyam, rajyasya mula indriya jayam, indriya jayasya mula vinayam. And in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about what each one of those things mean to our organization and how we have been able to apply it. Next slide, please, Bharat. The three pillars for innovation, we believe, is culture, collaboration, and communication. For us, culture is not about, for which most companies today lack, is a lack of true leadership and company policies. And now what is true leadership and company policies mean in terms of how does it really enable is what we're going to talk about in the coming slides, is what we believe is, is the dharma of an organization, right? And dharma is the way in which an organization operates itself. What we mean by that operation is that it has to be very agile and it has to be very fluid. So you cannot build an organization with just one parameter of thinking that you started with in the initial stages. It has to be agile and fluid as the organization is growing. And also it is very, very important that if you are building a good organization, you need to align yourself. You need to align yourself with what the government is doing, with the different policies that is being introduced, and how that will enable you as an organization and as an ecosystem to grow. Most of the times what we often fail to do is that we fail to collaborate the two. We say we are building our company and we focus on that, but we forget that the government also needs supports and input from organizations like us to come up with policies that helps us grow and scale at a much faster rate. And I'm going to focus on that and tell you how we were able to do that. Collaboration to us means cross-team collaboration. We do not hire an engineer and make the person focus only on the development of the product or the platform. To us, an engineer is a product manager. To us, an engineer is a marketeer. Similarly, to us, somebody who's a marketeer is also the one who writes the market requirement documentation and the product requirement documentation. So the left brains, that is the analytical, and the right, that is the creative, for us, that has to culminate too. So the communication part, which is a social implication, you have to understand that as individuals, as team members, everybody is very unique and different. So unless you are able to foster a culture of collaboration that enables very clean and clear communication method, it becomes very difficult for people to explore new skills, new talents. And that's when you said somebody is becoming jaded. So we try to elevate the whole aspect of becoming jaded by using communication as one of the tools. Next slide, please. Unspun, the name of the company, is all about simplifying complex. You go next slide, please. So like I said, so our company is focused on technology, services, and training. And what we do to adopt innovation, for us, it does not mean tech alone. It does not mean a top-down approach. It is about thinking innovatively and adopting a culture of innovation. So I will go to the next slide and explain to you how do we go ahead and do that. Sukhasya mula dharmam. So when you hear this word, it actually means the ideology of a happy organization, which is extremely important for an innovative organization, is the way in which you run the organization. So it is not one single idea that drives the organization, it's a multitude of ideas. Dharma today is about being agile. So for us, it is about, how do we collaborate different ideas and allow that to cross-communicate and innovate. And then we communicate it with not only the internal organization, but also our end customers. One of the things we have always kept in mind is that if you are building something, it is very, very important for you to continuously curate that and communicate that with your customers. So we have an idea which we call as the joint development platform, where whenever we are innovating on a new idea, we get our core team, which is the ideators, the developers, and the customers, onto one platform to discuss and deliberate whether that kind of idea will actually go into an implementation phase and see the light of the day before we start building. So we say building does not happen in isolation. It's an inclusive process, and that's why it is very, very important to kind of, keep that fluidity in mind. Next slide, please. MyPR.io, why we are focusing, or I'm sharing with you about this product idea was not developed by a product manager or an engineer. It was developed by a PR representative who works in our organization, who, while interacting with customers, felt the need to automate and do that very quickly. And why the need to automate and do that very quickly was so essential was that at the end of the day, when you're providing services to a client, it is very important for you to know if the services are actually adding real-time value and whether you can add analytics on top of it. So I'm going to quickly show you something which was actually developed by a PR representative with just about 3 years of experience as an idea work, which then went on to development and has become a full-fledged product. And you'll be surprised to know that our PR representatives holds a joint patent for this product, which is very, very unheard of. So we're going to quickly show you how this product works and how agile it is, and so that you get an idea of how innovation breathes from everywhere. While you see the video, you're going to understand that we are not only using machine learning to understand and adopt in terms of what PR really can do for clients. So for us, everyone is a client, an individual, an enterprise, a company that is into PR services like a Tex 100 2020, which are clients as well, where they're using our product to actually potentially deliver greater value to the end customer. So we are using machine learning to collate and curate different data drafts of press releases. We are using an automation discovery level to include keywords into the press release for larger and better dissemination. And then even, for example, a Virat Kohli today uses our product for his own PR management and PR assessment. So from a Virat to a enterprise to a PR services company, we had a value proposition for each. Why we showcase this product to you today, the whole purpose was to show you that how an idea bred out of somebody who's a junior resource in the organization, but was given an opportunity to ideate and was able to create that in association with the engineering and the product management team. But she continues to hold the patent for the product alongside the organization. And that's how we breed innovation in our organization. Next slide, please. For us, we believe that dharmasya mula artha, which means if you really have a culture of innovation in the organization, artha does not mean money. And even Bharat highlighted that if you can, either you can be counting beans or you can be gazing at the stars. If you just focus on the revenue angle of the organization, you often will stop focusing on the real innovation culture in the organization. Sometimes you may not make money instantaneously, but over a period of time, you'll be able to build a legacy and an organization that is built to scale even when you are gone. And for us, that is very important. We believe that the core fundamental for us, that is the artha, is the relationship. Most of our customers are our friends, are our joint development partners, and we incentivize our customers to give us inputs. So for us, revenue is not just from one way flowing from the customer's kitty to us, but is also flowing from our kitty to customers, so that there is an inclusive growth environment. And thereby, we are able to bring the same thing and harness the same thing between the co-workers and the products that we build today. So we have 3 products and we have 3 patents for it, is all because of that. And most of them has been led by people who are just subject matter experts with an innovation idea, coming up with it, sharing it, and jointly developing it with our customers. Next slide, please. For us, the Arthasya Mula Rajyam, that philosophy is all about saying that how do you leave your legacy behind? So your legacy is not about that individual who founds the company and runs the company. It is that individual being detached from the organization, yet adding value and seeing how the organization can grow and thrive. So for us, that's very, very critical. So for example, Adobe thrives on a creativity culture. The products are synonymous with creativity, and in avoidance of micromanaging, it's completely given to those who are design thinkers. So for us, the Rajyam, if we really want to build an organization that is sustainable and scalable, it has to be dealt by people who are subject matter experts and not somebody who's an individual driving the sentiments. And that's when you see the organizations fail. For example, a Snapdeal, or for example, a Stayzilla. The reason it failed purely because it was just a very individual-led organization and the ideas did not emerge and grow. Next slide, please. For us, Rajyasya Mula Indriyajayam, this whole philosophy is about how do you keep your five senses alive? It's very important to understand that typically what happens to most entrepreneurs is that once they start building the organization, they become so focused on revenue generation that they forget that gratitude, thankfulness, humility, integrity, and taking responsibility or sharing responsibility are extremely strong and key ingredients to actually sustain a very scalable organization. So what happens is when an organization is small, our focus remains constant, but when it's growing, it tends to fall apart because it becomes all about generating revenue. So our focus has been about staying grateful to the customers that we work with, to the partners that we work with, keeping our humility intact and allowing our internal team to take responsibility and accountability for the work that they do. And that is a shared accountability and responsibility method that we call it. So that's where the emotional intelligence for us supersedes the artificial intelligence, and thereby the knowledge and creativity that we generate is boundless. As I'm talking to you guys, we are publishing our first book with Penguin, which is going to be out end of May, in just talking about this entire philosophy of how we've been able to do it and run an organization and have been completely bootstrapped and profitable. So how do you really look from the outward in approach that rather than that inward out approach? Next slide, please. For us, of course, when we talk about Indriya Jayasya Mula Vinayam, the whole idea of Vinayam is humility. Well, I didn't have a lot of I didn't have a lot of slides that I wanted to share. I wanted to share more on the philosophy of building an organization, and there has to be that core philosophy that everyone that you hire believes in. It's very important to inculcate that and also identify people who believe in that, or you are able to harness that in them because they need to have an open mindset. And that's where humility lies. Humility is the fine line between the reality and the fantasy. If you really want to stop, if you really want to see people grow in an organization and not see people hopping, they have to have the same vision like you do. So they have to not just look at fantasy as a way of life and saying that I'm going to earn X amount of money, this kind of a car, this kind of a house, but saying that, hey, I'm going to be a joint patent holder. I'm going to have sweat and equity in the organization, and I will grow along with my organization and be the risk sharer and thereby have the sense of empowerment. So for us, that crossing the chasm of reality and fantasy is the humility that binds us as an organization together. And that's why we say that, we simplify what is complex, and that's what Unspun stands for. So for us, these are the core philosophies on which Unspun is built. Thank you so much for listening. I think Bharat gave a large and a very detailed overview from a tech perspective. I wanted to share from a philosophy perspective of how we have built the organization and how we are scaling. Thank you so much, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have. You can always look me up. My name is Dr. Shomdatta Singh. All my details are at www.drshomdatta.com, and my mail ID is shom@drshomdatta.com. Happy to collaborate with any one of you and see how we can help. Thank you so much for listening in today.
Thank you, Shom. Thank you, Bharat. This was a great session. We have about 5-7 minutes left. So we would like to take some questions, and the first questions before it goes, it coming from Priyanka, and she says the question is for Bharat. How do you decide when to kill an idea in incubation versus continue searching for market fit? In the example of Nukkad Shop, how did you decide that you were going to pursue it for 2 years and didn't give up earlier? So,
okay, so that's that's a question that kind of deserves a long answer. But then I know that we're short of time, so I'll try to kind of crunch it as much as possible, right? So when the thing is that when you start out with a new product, you feel that there's a problem that needs to be solved, or a certain value that needs to be created in the market. right? But then the thing is that the problem is there, but there's a question whether the market thinks that your solution is the right solution or not. And as you engage with the market, it gives you feedback. Hey, it says that you try something. For example, Nukkad Shops initially started out as a as a grofers kind of a product, right? So it's as an Uber for groceries, right? But then we started this before grocers or grofers or Local Bunny or any of these guys were already out there in the market, right? So once we hit the market, obviously we knew that okay, I mean, we'll not be able to generate a signal that is equivalent to what these guys are creating in the market by putting out front page ads on Times of India and so on and so forth. So we try to basically introduce a hack and see if that hack is making sense. And as you do that, the market gives you one more, it gives you more feedback, and then you kind of try to basically, it's like you're playing a game of chess, right? You know that ultimately you're going to win or lose, but then you will keep on playing till you see that there is an advantage. There's a play that you need to make, and then the market is not your adversary. The market is your collaborator. So you need to figure out where the value is, where the market is willing to pay you money, or invest in attention, whatever it is. So I think that what keeps you going, or then I mean, is basically you look at the feedback, you see that you ask the question, hey, is there new opportunity based on the feedback? And if there's new opportunity, do I have a runway to execute it? If I have runway to execute it, I'll execute it, right? And if when I execute it, will the returns be big enough? Will it still be a big market? So long as these questions are answered, you can keep you can keep iterating, right? But if you feel that, hey, I'm not able to move forward, then probably it's time for you to do something else. I mean, we can have a much more detailed answer one-on-one, but
Yeah,
I think that's basically.
I'm sure Bharat can take an hour-long session on this topic itself. But in interest of time, I'll just take one last question, and it is I would like to put it to both of you. You guys are building brilliant organizations, and while doing so, the employee engagement and the employee performance is a very key element. Uh, we generally see that organizations have quarterly, half-yearly, or monthly appraisal programs. Or so this question comes from Satyendra, who is asking that how do you measure employee performance being in such an environment? So maybe you could start with Shom and then to Bharat.
Sure.
Hi, Shom, are you there? It looks like Shom is in some bad network area.
Okay. So I would say that it is. Yeah, I mean, employee performance management is always a big challenge, right? And there's basically no clear answer to it, and I can I mean, different organizations, right? Every organization is trying to do its own thing. Google is doing something, Microsoft is doing something, and every 10 years they kind of reverse what they did, and then go back to something that they were doing in the past, to something of that kind, right? So I think that is that is an open problem, and companies will need to evolve what they need. I mean, as the organization changes, the performance management approaches will also change, right? So right now for us, we are moving to a process of continuous evaluation, where the whole idea is how do you kind of give feedback to your people on a very regular basis, and also kind of ensure that they're in alignment with, or they're doing things that will help them become more successful in life down the line, right? They're doing things that are adding value to them as professionals as well as individuals. So I think that in general, the one, I mean, I think ultimately performance. When you look at performance management in terms of in terms of compensation, I think I'm not too worried about it, because ultimately the market takes care of it, right? In the sense that if you feel that if your people feel that they're not being adequately compensated, they kind of leave, or they let you know, and you'll be forced to take corrective actions. I'm focused more on how do we build in a culture where people are giving constant feedback, and people are kind of provided regular direction, so that they are moving, so that they're spending time in a way that will that will create more value for them as individuals, as well as for the organization. And that's where this, and also as a culture, we're not used to having difficult conversations, right? But I think that uh, that's something that we'll need to kind of start having more of, right? Having this difficult conversations between managers, and between their colleagues on a very regular basis. And I don't when I mean difficult conversations, I basically mean talking about the real issues that that matter for the employee as well as the company when it comes to growth, and be transparent about it, and not just try to beat around the bush, right? I think that as a culture, especially in this stage of our corporate evolution, especially where in certain sectors like tech and tech product and tech services, there is tremendous opportunity. At the same time, there is also tremendous risk, right? And I think that at this point in time, we'll need to ensure that our people are actually, we are able to kind of leverage our human capital to the best possible, and then ensure also that our human capital is kind of being trained, so that they as well as the organization can succeed into the future, right? And I think a lot of that is actually regular coaching between the mentor and the associate on a very frequent basis.
Thank you, Bharat. I'm just wondering whether we have Shom on the line. Shom, could you hear us? I think she's facing some network turbulence.
Okay, she's not showing up on the list, on the speaker list.
Disconnected as well. Anyway, so thank you very much, Bharat, and I'll pass on regards to Shom as well. And thank you everyone for joining us for the session. We have to leave now, because we are already over. We have already surpassed the time. Now, just one last request: please do share your feedback as we close the webinar. And thank you, Bharat, for sharing your insights with us.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. And any further conversations you would like to have, please ping me on LinkedIn. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.